going across on that thin branch?
It's just incredible.
We know that birds do it, sometimes bees do it, but there aren't many mammals that do it. Squirrels and occasionally rats do it. Yes, you've guessed it, they nest in trees. This is the story of another tree-nesting mammal, one of the strangest and rarest creatures on Earth. It's the aye-aye from Madagascar, and our plan is to catch half a dozen of them to help save the species from extinction. But let's start at the beginning, 6,000 miles away from Madagascar. This is Kishka, a lowland gorilla. She's one of the members of the animal collection I established here over 30 years ago. My name, by the way, is Gerald Durrell. And if I have one passion in life, it's saving rare creatures from extinction. Silvery marmosets from Brazil. White-naped cranes from Korea and Japan. That strange pig, the barbarusa, a native of Indonesia. The San Francisco garter snake. And ring-tailed lemurs from Madagascar. All these beautiful creatures have one thing in common. They're among the most endangered animals in the world. And we have given them sanctuary on a small island not far from the coast of France. At 45 square miles, Jersey is the largest of the British Channel Islands. It's the place after which New Jersey was named. A man from Jersey Island, Sir George Carteret, owned half of New Jersey state. He sold it 300 years ago to a group of Quakers for less than $7,000. One of the island's oldest manor houses is now the home of my Jersey Wildlife Preservation Trust. Since the start in the early 60s, we have set up similar organizations in the United States and in Canada. I began writing books on animals to help pay off the mortgage on the manor house and the growing list of creditors. Now I've written over 30 books, which have been translated into 24 languages, and I've paid off the mortgage and all the debts. Judging from the letters I get, people are becoming more aware of the need to preserve the world, all the creatures on it. The reason for the work here is not just keeping animals like an ordinary zoo, a stamp collection of creatures. We want to get them to breed. That's what we're really all about. Then, when we've successfully bred them, we can return the youngsters to the wild again, so making sure these species do not follow the dodo to extinction. I chose the dodo as a symbol of the trust because it seemed to me the personification of what mankind is doing all over the world to other animal forms. The dodo was a big, harmless, bumbling, flightless bird which lived on an island in the Indian Ocean, and it was discovered, and within 100 years it was extinct. The threat of disappearing forever is one that faces every species in our collection, and none more so than the lemurs from the Indian Ocean island of Madagascar. I have a special liking for them, as they were the animals that introduced me to my wife, Lee. Lee is an American and spent 2 years in Madagascar studying lemurs and their communication. We met in the United States at a conference on lemurs, and I've been saying thank you to the lemurs ever since.
When I met Jerry, I was still writing up on my thesis, and I think I was only on chapter 4 when I actually met him, and it was rather difficult to get through to chapter 8 during the sort of courtship period. Anyway, we got married, and I came to the trust, and my work moved from more of the academic side of zoology directly into conservation. And so here I'm very much involved in all the meetings we have. I run a couple of conservation projects myself, particularly those in Madagascar, which is fairly logical, I guess.
Very well in conjunction with the field work that I'm actually doing in the forest.
Sunbathing in Jersey seems a secure enough existence for this red-ruffed lemur. These and the other lemurs of Madagascar are part of an important project at the zoo.
Madagascan animals are a treasure trove for biologists. About 150 million years ago, the island broke away from Africa, carrying a strange cargo of plants and animals, which became even stranger as evolution got to work.
Lemurs, found only in Madagascar, are especially interesting because a lemur-like creature was the ancestor of all the primates, the group of animals that includes monkeys, apes, and ourselves. Studying lemurs helps us understand our own dim, distant origins, but sadly, the loss of forests in Madagascar means that lemurs are on their way out. Already a dozen species have become extinct, and the 30 others are seriously threatened. There's one in particular we felt needed our help, and it became the main target of our expedition, a bizarre lemur called the aye-aye.
It was first identified over 200 years ago by the Frenchman who made this sketch. He noticed a strange characteristic. The third finger on its hand was unusually elongated. Because of its weird looks and its finger, it has become a symbol of death, and most Malagasy kill aye-ayes on sight. In planning our expedition, we were going to take with us 2 members of our staff, Quentin Bloxham, our senior curator, and John Hartley, who's been my personal assistant for the last 25 years. In planning any expedition, there are 101 things to take care of and to remember. No use remembering it when you're 1,000 miles away from nowhere. This expedition is going to be particularly exciting. We're going to a part of Madagascar that none of us have ever been to before.
They've used it for tabby and it's just been abandoned when it's become infertile.
Although, no, all right, so the biosphere...
To get to Madagascar, the simple way is to fly to Mauritius. And this suited us very well, for we've been working on this Indian Ocean island for 15 years. And I wanted to return once again to see how our projects were progressing. Mauritius was the home of the dodo, and it's ironic to think that the most complete set of bones of this flightless bird was found right here under the tarmac, where now the giant jets land and take off with such ease.
Mauritius is 40 miles long and 28 wide, with a population of well over 1 million people. Everyone descends from immigrants, people coming from Africa, Europe, and even China. Nearly 2/3 are of Indian origin, and the reason for that is sugarcane. After the abolition of slavery, the Indians were willing to work for low wages as the sugar industry in Mauritius was getting underway. Sugar is still the main crop. The leaves are burnt off deliberately to make harvesting easier. European colonists did to Mauritius what they did in their own countries, cut down most of the forests for timber and to make way for agriculture.
As well as the loss of its forests, Mauritian wildlife couldn't cope with the introduction of foreign animals. The Dutch brought in deer, which ate the seedlings of the native forest trees. The Portuguese released macaque monkeys, which destroy nests. And from India came several kinds of birds which drive out the local varieties. Man is forever tinkering with nature and getting it wrong like a child fiddling about with the internal organs of a complex watch. For instance, the Indian myna birds were released to control locusts. Now they've become a pest and harry all other birds.
The most beautiful of the native Mauritian birds is the pink pigeon. In 1976, there were fewer than 20 birds left. We've now bred more than 200 and have released some of them back into the wild. Kirsty, who's one of the Trust's permanent team in Mauritius, had delayed the release of a pink pigeon so that we could watch it. Even pigeons are vulnerable to man's activities. For example, in America, the passenger pigeon was the most numerous bird found on Earth, yet it was hunted to extinction. The last one died in Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. But we hope we've saved the pink pigeon. The Mauritian kestrel was once reckoned to be the rarest bird in the world. In 1974, only 4 were known to live in the wild. Pesticides, DDT was the main culprit, almost brought about the kestrel's extinction. But the staff here began a captive breeding program, and over the past 7 years, well over 100 kestrels have been released. At first, kestrels need the occasional white mouse, a dead one, till they get used to finding their own food. All these birds were bred by a team led by the Trust's conservation field officer, Carl Jones.
Things have changed a little bit since you were here last, and we've got some echo parakeets now, which of course we've only had over the last year or so. And, well, here they are, the world's rarest parrots.
Aren't they beautiful? They're quite different, aren't they?
Oh yes, they're exquisite birds.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's only about a dozen left in the wild. The population is doing better than it has done, but of course it's not doing very well. And out of those 12 birds, of those 12 wild birds, there's only 3 known females. And
that's very tricky.
And they don't breed every year, so it's touch and go whether or not we will be able to save them.
These are rare pictures. Echo parakeets living wild in the damp forests above the Black River Gorge. Before we flew on to Madagascar, there was one thing in particular I really wanted to do: return to Round Island, a few miles north of Mauritius. This project is a real example of cooperation, because we've worked with the governments of Mauritius, New Zealand and Australia, plus the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Round Island is, of course, an extinct volcano, and it sort of lies on the sea, rather like a tortoiseshell. And at one time it was wooded right up to the peaks here with hardwoods, palms, and beautiful vegetation, some of it endemic to the island. And then man came and did to it what he is busy doing now to all the rest of the world. By that I mean he comes in and he plunders. Due to arthritis, I've had to have both my hips replaced. A most successful operation, but it means that I'm not as mobile as I used to be because of these bloody fake hips. In microcosm, Round Island represents what we are doing to the whole world. First of all, they came in here and they took timber, they destroyed the seabirds and ate them. Then they did the absolutely unforgivable thing. They released the 2 things which you should never release on an island that is not naturally found there. One is goats and the other is rabbits. And of course goats are the most terrible things. They're like sort of furry bulldozers. So the first thing, obviously, that we had to do was to, first of all, rescue the reptiles which are found here, which are found nowhere else except in the mascarenes. And in order to get those away, so that even if the island decayed and fell apart and we couldn't save it, at least we did have these animals still with us. So we got the reptiles off, and we got some of the plants off, and the palm trees off. And then we set about the job of eliminating the goats and the rabbits. The island has started to flourish again, and Quentin, our reptile expert, was pleased by what he found since his last visit.
The change in the vegetation is really quite staggering. The amount of palms that are regenerating is the one thing that strikes me very forcibly, and also the amount of ground cover that's appearing. And this must benefit all the reptiles that exist here. The ones that are of the major interest is the Round Island boa. There used to be 2 boas here, but one is now sadly extinct. And this is the remaining one, which is the main predator on the island because it predates upon the other lizards and geckos. The other one that's of major interest is the Round Island gecko, which belongs to a family called Phelsuma, but this is the last giant Phelsuma left, and it only exists on Round Island. And the last reptile of great interest is the Round Island skink, a very robust terrestrial lizard that predates not sometimes even on its own kind, but would also predate on other small lizards, and is probably the most abundant reptile on the island.
You might think an obscure little lizard is of no importance. People have suggested this to me, and it makes me very angry. Every living thing on this planet has a right to exist. Once it's vanished, we cannot, for all our cleverness, recreate it.
Now, the whole island is starting to come back slowly but slowly. And I reckon probably within the next 30, 50 years, we'll get it back, not quite exactly what it was, but a pretty good representation of what it was. We've saved a little bit of the world and its contents.
On a small island with no human population, the task of conserving the environment is difficult enough. But can the same be done on a very much bigger scale in a place like Madagascar, for example? Maybe not, but we must try.
Most expeditions have to start in the capital city of a country, because it's there you go through what diplomats call the necessary formalities. So we went to Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo, 4,000 feet up in the Central Highlands. Most people call it Tana. Like many cities, Tana's at its best on market day. Officially, the Democratic Republic of Madagascar is a Christian Marxist state, an odd combination. Although only 250 miles off the African coast, the major ethnic influence is from the east. The first people to arrive here came from Indonesia, about 1,500 years ago. The language, too, is from the east, although French is widely spoken in the towns. While Jerry, John, and I dealt with the formalities, Quentin was in charge of buying supplies and equipment for our base camp.
Van Sank? Van Sank?
Van Sank is Fransje.
Van Sank.
Ah, my dear.
The Malagasy are a friendly lot, and someone always turns up to help out. Finally, all the chores were done, and we hit the road for Tamatave, a port on the east coast. Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world, 1,000 miles long and 350 at its widest. It was quite a relief to get underway. After years of thinking about the expedition, months of planning, and over a week in Tana, at last we were heading towards Ai country.
Mind you, this was the easy bit. The road which connects Tana to Tamatave is one of the few good roads in Madagascar. Most of it was built by the Chinese. We stayed the night in Tamatave and then headed north to Mananara, an area where the most recent sightings of the Ai have been reported. Things were going very smoothly until we came to what looked like a very solid metal bridge. But our wheels found a steel girder that had been made paper-thin by rust. I decided to get out and walk. It was impossible to tell how many other girders were about to give way, and I felt, selfishly perhaps, a 50-foot drop into the river would do my hips no good. So, with a slightly dented vehicle and a somewhat rapid increase in heartbeat, we continued the journey. This is the only road to Mananara. It's closed for much of the year when the rains bring floods and landslides, and even bridges get washed away. We'd chosen October to travel because that gives the best chance of a dry period. But here there was no guarantee. You're never even sure if the ferry is going to work. Look, it's might be quicker by cow.
As we moved further north, I began to check out the reports we'd had on II sightings.
Mais est-ce qu'il y avait des hai-hai ici, il y a longtemps ou...
Ja, misy taty ela fa ela be. Oui. Mety fitraronay zay mbola kely angamba. Il en a assez longtemps.
Assez longtemps.
Peut-être à cause de la forêt brûlée.
I always left these inquiries to Lee. I'm afraid that my French can just about get by on a restaurant.
Oui, il en a beaucoup. Ja, misy taty taloha.
Mais quand, il y a combien de temps
Teo firy taona teo?
Il a très petit.
Yes.
Peut-être 15 ans, 17 ans.
Peut-être même 15 ans. Hein?
Oui.
Il y avait un forêt
Oui.
ici.
I didn't expect much luck on my first questions about II, but 15 years too late was rather disheartening. By the end of our first full day's drive out of Tamatau, we'd clocked up the grand total of 60 miles, and we'd been told that the going would get tougher, and there were many more ferries and over 100 bridges ahead. The next morning, we had to wait a few hours for the ferry. It crosses a river estuary here, and the tide was low. But this gave me another chance for an II chat.
Est-ce que vous avez entendu de hai-hai, comme les Mériens? C'est tout noir et les oreilles comme ça.
Oui, je connais
Mais Miss Hai-hai?
No.
That was another lesson learnt. In this part of Madagascar, mention II, and nobody knows what you're talking about. So from now on, it's hai-hai.
Ça dépend de la forêt, n'est-ce pas? Oui. Mais il n'y a pas beaucoup de forêts dans cette
C'est très loin.
Sandakatse, oui, il y a des forêts à Sandakatse, oui.
That was good news, as Sandrakatse is one of the areas we wanted to explore. At least people knew about the I mean hai-hai, and they were willing to talk about it, in spite of its bad reputation.
As we pushed further north, the going indeed got more difficult, but our inquiry seemed to be paying off.
Il a de la pirogue à moteur pour aller à Fuchelana, mais pas avec la voiture.
In all the little villages we passed through, the houses were beautifully built and the front yards were carefully swept and as neat as pins. And no tourists, except for these two, of course. Each ferry seemed to have a different means of propulsion. Sometimes a pole, sometimes an ancient outboard, and sometimes a cable.
Three days out of Tanna, we finally arrived and found a place for our base camp. It's not just being polite, it's necessary to ask permission of the headman of the village. But the people were more than willing to help us.
It amazed me that with not much more than a bamboo, a spade, and a kuk-kuk, as they called the machete here, they could construct two large shelters, one for the animals and one for us to work from, in not much more than a day. I could tell our base camp was going to be very palatial. I've been on a fair number of expeditions, and this was to be the most comfortable camp I can remember.
On completion of a building, the Malagasy always ask for the blessing of their ancestors, who play an important role in everyone's daily life. The centerpiece of the ceremony seemed to be a basket of folded banana leaves sprinkled with some local beer. It obviously has some significance, but we never found out quite what. Everyone joined in, asking for good luck. We were happy to buy some of the local brew as our contribution. There were certain taboos about the river we had to learn. We couldn't use it as a bathroom, in all senses of the word. Also, we couldn't say the word crocodile for fear of attracting one. All quite sensible if you think about it. And at last, the hunt for Ai began.
We'd been lucky enough to get young Julian to help us. He was a fantastic tree climber and had already caught Ai in the past. What we were looking for were Ai nests, which can be 60 feet or more up.
You going across on that thin branch?
It's just incredible, those trees. I've never seen anything like it.
Strengthen the upper arms as
Yeah,
well as the
well,
legs, as well as the legs.
Yeah, I mean, I was whistling the other day. I reckon you had tremendous arm strength.
It all seemed so easy at first, but the nests were empty. Ai are nocturnal, and John and Quentin reckoned that a night search might yield better results. But the first morning's report wasn't good.
Well, they weren't there.
There's one squawking away, a few hundred metres away across some rice paddies.
On the other side of the river? Or...
No, the same side, but there's a cold patch of rice paddies and stuff, and then there's some more forest.
I mean, did he say?
A mystère. They clearly just come in, they come in that area to feed. Or they did that night. And whether they come in other nights, I just can't, I mean, how can you tell? They're such a mysterious animal.
We'd now been in camp for a week, and still no Ai. The collapsible cages were ready, and I was getting really frustrated at being stuck in camp.
If I can arrange it somehow so I can slide the tray out.
By now we heard reports of II damaging crops, so John went out to check.
Bonjour. Petit number? Bonjour. Qu'est-ce que tu trouvais?
Ok, t'as quoi additionnel?
Ça cuit, par ici avant toi.
Il y a les cocos là, ou vanille, ou quoi?
Ravenal.
Ravenal?
Oui.
C'est déjà longtemps, ça.
Oui, c'est bien. Well, there's some II damage. I mean, it's really how it's chewed through each little segment. But it's very old. I mean, this is several months old. But once again, proves that they're about. I'm finding this extremely difficult because any other animal that the Trust has ever gone to bring in for captive breeding, we've been able to really read up about it in advance and have a very good feel for its behaviour, the sort of country it lives in. And with that knowledge, you can then make a good plan of actually how you're going to trap it. Everything we are hearing about the II conflicts all the time, and so we don't have a clear image in our minds of how it lives. It seems to sometimes have lots of nests, other times is using only one nest. In there, you can't see more than 6 or 8 feet. But I think, you know, as we said, it's a flag-waving exercise. I think if the villagers come and tell us something, we don't follow it up. They're just
they're just going to get round off, yes. So things been bitten.
It's done a good job, hasn't it?
Looks as though it's made a flute.
As the people cut and burn the forest to plant the things they need, like rice, cloves, coffee, sugar and coconuts, so the forest is pushed back. The II is turned into a pest because in order to eat, it has to raid the sugar and coconut crops. You can't blame the villagers, and you can't blame the II. The United Nations is trying to solve this catch-22 problem of people versus animals, which of course happens all over the world. They've created what they call man and biosphere reserves. The first of these reserves in Madagascar has been set up right here in the Mananara region, and people are learning new ways to use their forests without destroying them.
These biosphere reserves are not simply wildlife sanctuaries. The idea is for man and the natural environment, including animals, to live in some sort of balance. We'd been told that an II makes a fresh nest every few nights, and judging by the number we saw, this certainly seems to be true. So one sure method of knowing whether II was still in an area was to pull apart their abandoned nests. Any new nests we came across had to mean that II was still around. Meanwhile, John and Quentin kept going out at night and kept coming back in the morning.
What luck?
You better break out the medical chest.
The what?
We need the medical chest.
Why?
Why?
Julian got his hands on one in the middle of the night, savaged 3 of his fingers.
Oh, God. Badly?
Not too bad. The middle one's got a sort of major teeth mark right through it.
But he actually got his hand on it.
Grabbed it by the tail.
Had hold of it by the tail.
Turned around and bit his fingers.
And it turned around and bit him. And of course, he said afterwards how stupid he was, because he had the white bag round his neck with a pair of gloves in, but he was there and there wasn't time to sort of do that.
Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé?
We weren't having any success, so we decided to enlist extra help. Anyway, John and Quentin were getting very tired, as their sort of hunting was very exhausting, and Julian couldn't climb as well with his injured fingers. The people were quite happy to help. It meant they could earn a little extra money. But when we asked them how best to set about catching the aye-aye, there were various opinions.
Does he feel that daytime hunting is likely to be more successful than nighttime?
Le plus grand succès pour attraper le aye-aye, que c'est son avis, c'est de chercher dans la nuit ou dans la journée.
Everything takes time in Madagascar, and even more so when 3 different languages are involved.
Suivre pendant la nuit pour trouver son partier, as other people have done. They follow at night to find out where they're nesting during the day, and then actually do the catching at the nest during the day.
With extra aye-aye hunters, we were able to take the search further afield. One of the people we particularly wanted to contact was Dr. Roland Albignac. He's the man in charge of the biosphere reserves in Madagascar, and he knows more about the aye-aye's habits than anyone else.
This is the best place I see with you.
Well, this is the area that Quentin and Julian saw 10 animals in this area.
Yes,
And we've had many people have told us, come to this village, come to that village.
Yeah.
But this is the only place where one of us have seen aye-aye.
Seen the animals.
So we know they are here. There are no east to us.
No, and I think it's the best place I see. Huh?
With so many more people now looking, our hopes were high. We saw plenty of other creatures, but never an aye-aye.
In the large area we covered, there was no shortage of old aye-aye nests, but nowhere could we find a new one. And we had only another 2 weeks to go. Much longer than that, and we might get cut off by the approaching rainy season.
There was the occasional consolation prize, like this lovely snake, a boa called Sanzinia, which we collected for a special breeding program run by zoos in the United States. Few people think that reptiles are an important part of conservation, but they're just as important as other animals.
Beautiful head.
Oh, there you are. Now perhaps you'll stop talking about the damn.
Oh, another 10 now.
We've talked about nothing else since we arrived here.
We were 3 weeks into our hunt for the aye-aye. Everyone was getting frustrated. Julian, our ace hunter, continued the nighttime searches, hoping to follow an aye-aye back to its nest at dawn. They made me camp cook. Trying to make something edible out of a dried octopus like an old boot certainly tests your culinary abilities.
Firstly, they showed me a nest.
The next morning we joined John, who had had a very encouraging report that an aye-aye had been spotted close to a nearby village.
Before last. And I didn't have anybody with me, so I felt that the best thing to do was to just have a very quiet look and then come back this morning.
While Julian went up to deal with an abandoned nest he'd spotted, the rest of us looked for more recent signs. Maybe this wasn't an abandoned nest after all. Julian threw down some still green leaves.
Well, for instance, I think we need some good talk with the villagers. Julian's been up, and he's brought that, but that doesn't look like eye branches, and he's brought it out of the nest. It could possibly be a rat's nest.
And it was a rat's nest. Another failure.
Well, the nest was about sort of that big.
Yeah. But I think what we need to do is to have a good chat with Julian.
By this time, Julian and the other hunters were urging us to enlist the help of the local soothsayer. Well, we couldn't be doing any worse. I reckon we needed any help we could get.
All over Madagascar, there are people who claim they can communicate with their ancestors. For some of these soothsayers, a local ancestral spirit will enter their bodies and speak its words of wisdom with its own voice, and even indulge in its former habits, like smoking, or sometimes drinking beer. This likable ancestor insisted on paying us for the beer, which cost more than the fee the soothsayer charged in the first place.
He says the ancestors have now arrived and they're now ready to answer any questions we may ask.
We would like to know why so far we've met with such little success in catching eye. Spirits of the ancestors are very important for Malagasy. They believe the ancestors watch and protect them all the time, and they consult them for guidance on both big and small matters. So we must take this ceremony seriously, especially as everyone around us feels it's of such great importance.
Si vous respectez bien, c'est-à-dire les coutumes malgaches, il en sera sûr qu'on gagne le Haï. Oui. Il faut suivre point par point les coutumes malgaches, dit-il. Oui.
He said if we respect the Malagasy customs and everything that's necessary to do according to Malagasy custom in this kind of mission, it says without doubt we will certainly be able to catch the eyelets.
That's very nice. Now the soothsayer is going into reverse. His smoking and drinking ancestor has decided that he's told us enough, and he's leaving the soothsayer's body. I don't know whether it was the soothsayer, but the very next day, it looked as though our luck might have turned.
You've got what I think you've got.
You got something?
Oh, God, I can't believe it.
What is it, male or female?
Male.
Marvellous. Is it okay? I mean, is it not hurt?
But it's hiding in the box.
How marvellous. Can we see it?
You might be able to just see the tail through the holes the other end. I put it right against the thing so it doesn't go rushing around in the cage.
I was so amazed at our luck that after all the disappointment, I was almost speechless.
That's marvellous. Bravo.
You're right.
Aged me considerably, that's true.
I'm not sure whether the villagers really understood what this all meant to us, but our relief was immense. For I had thought we may have travelled all that way and spent all that time only to go home empty-handed. This one was a male. What we want now are a couple more males and 3 females.
It's got twice the distance. It should probably be mobile tonight, I think.
So,
Up to you go.
So what's the story? How did you...
Once it was settled down, it came out of its box, and we could see its huge ears and eyes and the soft black fur tipped with silver.
We found 2 fresh nests, and we've got 3 other guys searching tonight, tomorrow and the next day that will tell us as soon as they find fresh nests.
Marvellous.
To us, at that moment, it was the most beautiful creature in the world. We were all fascinated, but for nighttime feeding, we tried not to crowd around. That was left to one person, Lee.
What are you looking at there? What are you looking at? Hmm? Come on, sweetie. Come on. What's that? What's that? Come on. Look here. That's a sweetheart. Come on. Come on, yes? Yes?
Our first aye tamed down quite quickly. We wanted to get him feeding on something we knew we could find back home in Jersey, which was a mixture of bread, honey, and egg yolk. He loved this and took it right from my hand.
That's right. Use your little finger. Do you like that?
One could see how he uses that long, thin finger, just as he would in the wild, to extract grubs from logs and dip the milk and scrape the pulp from a coconut.
Do you like that? Hmm? Come on, use your little finger. That's a feather. Oh, Vera, do you like that a lot, don't you? Do you like that a lot? You're waiting for that tonight, hmm? Come on. Come on. Do you like that, hmm?
I always try to talk to the children. It's important that they get the message, because within the next generation, their generation, the survival or extinction of any number of species will be decided. You know, you have a lot of animals here that live in the forests, and they are found nowhere else in the world. And they are of great interest to the people of my country and the people of America. Go to any school anywhere in the world, and it seems that if they want to honor their guests, they sing to you a song. I love it.
The aye was once thought to be a rodent because of its chisel-like teeth. But with the eyes set at the front of its head and its grasping hands and feet, it's clearly a primate. With the huge mobile ears, it has great powers of hearing, and it seems to locate insect grubs deep inside tree trunks by listening for their faint movements. Aye have never been bred in captivity before, but there are 2 at the zoo in Paris now, and 3 at the lemur colony at Duke University in the States.
Closing your eyes. Yes, come.
We finally caught 5 other aye-ayes, enough, we hope, to get an international breeding program off to a good start. So, in spite of all the earlier doubts and frustrations, the aye-aye expedition had been a success. Within a couple of days of leaving the Malagasy rainforest, the aye-aye were moving into a new home on the island of Jersey.
What have we got?
Come and have this lovely walnut. Now they're here, now the next thing is to breed them. Come along, my sweet. We've got to have lots of lovely babies.
One day, we hope to be able to return baby aye born here in Jersey back to their native home, as we are doing with other animals all over the world.